But now that we're laughing and feeling childlike, I can tell some of these stories. Now, our people would tell these stories, and this was how the knowledge of the people was handed down from generation to generation. We'd have stories that would tell about the surroundings, why the landscape is shaped the way it is, why animals are shaped the way they are, and why they behave the way they do. We also had stories that they'd tell just for fun. And the children, they would hear these stories every winter time. From the time that they were in cradle boards, all the way until they grew up, and they became the ones to tell the stories to the children. The children would also learn how they were expected to behave in these stories. Now the first story that the children hear is about Coyote and how he created people. Now Coyote lived here in this valley, and every springtime he would travel up onto the Spruce Prairie to visit his cousin the fox. One spring while Coyote was away, a huge monster came up out of the ocean onto the land. This monster was so large when he'd open his mouth and draw in a breath, all of the plants and animals would fly into his stomach. This monster's name was Iceye'ye. Now Meadowlark knew that Coyote was very smart and had great power. Coyote would be able to defeat this monster. So Meadowlark flew as fast as he could to find Coyote. 3 days later he came to the fox's den, and he hollered, Iceye'ye, come where, home to it! Coyote, Coyote, come quick! Coyote came rushing out of Fox's den and asked Meadowlark what was going on. Meadowlark told Coyote about this huge monster that he was devouring all of the animal people. So Coyote came up with a plan to defeat this monster. He went to the trees, and he began to gather pitch. And when he had enough pitch, he made a large ball and he put that in his sack. Then Coyote gathered 5 stone knives. He wrapped them in clean buckskin, and he put those in his sack. Then Coyote went to a pond nearby, and he cut hemp. And Coyote braided this hemp into a good strong rope. He bundled that up, and he put that in his sack. When Coyote had gathered all of the tools that he would need to defeat this monster, he went to the sweat house and he crawled inside. And he sweat for a long time, really hot, to clean himself, because he didn't want to taste bad to this monster. When he was finished, he came out and he gathered his things, and Coyote came back to this valley. And Coyote could see the monster sleeping down in the valley, so he took out his rope, and he tied one end around his waist, and he tied the other end around a mountain. And Coyote hollered at this monster, Iceye'ye, you can't devour me, my power's too strong! The monster woke up and he looked around, but he didn't see anyone. All he heard was the voice, Iceye'ye, you can't devour me, my power's too strong! The monster opened his mouth and drew in a breath, but Coyote just went to the end of his rope and stopped. Coyote started singing songs, teasing this monster, trying to get him angry. He'd sing, Kutskutsinich, Uneye, Uneye, Kutskutsinich, Uneye, Uneye. And the monster got angry, and he emptied out his lungs and drew in a huge breath. This time Coyote cut his rope, and he went flying into the monster's stomach. It was really dark in there. Coyote couldn't see anything, so he took out his ball of pitch and he built a fire. And the fat melted from the monster's heart and dripped into the fire and kept it going. The monster gripped his chest. Oh, that Coyote. Oh, heartburn was so bad. Poor monster. There's no such thing as Pepsid AC. Now Coyote could see many of the animals already devoured, nothing but bone. Some of the animals were sick and others were scared. So Coyote told these animals, you gather up these bones and you put them in front of all of the holes in the monster, because when he takes his last breath, he'll open up. You kick those bones out and follow right behind. So that's what the animals did. They gathered up the bones and they put them in front of all of the holes in the monster. Now Coyote reached down to get his knives, and Rattlesnake was there. Rattlesnake snapped at Coyote. Coyote asked Rattlesnake, why are you snapping at me? I'm here to save you. You move aside and let me go to work. But Rattlesnake wouldn't listen. So Coyote got mad and he stepped on his head. That's why to this day Rattlesnake's head is flat. Coyote took out one of his knives and he went over to the heart of the monster. And Grizzly Bear was standing in the way. Coyote told Grizzly Bear, move aside so I can go to work. Now Grizzly Bear didn't like being bossed around by this little Coyote. So he roared at Coyote and he swung at Coyote with his huge paw. Coyote asked the grizzly bear, "Why are you roaring at me? I'm here to save you. You move aside and be quiet. Let me go to work." "Kulma, imoso." The grizzly bear wouldn't listen. So Coyote got mad and he punched him in the nose. That's why to this day, grizzly bear's nose is flat. Coyote took his knife and he began to cut on the heart of the monster. And the monster rolled around in agony, hollering, "Coyote, come out!" But Coyote wouldn't listen. He just kept cutting away. Coyote slipped and broke his knife. So he picked up another knife and he kept cutting on the monster's heart. And the monster began to beg Coyote to come out. He'd say, "Coyote, Coyote, come out! Come out my nose!" Coyote said, "No, I'm not going to come out your nose, because then all the animal people will make fun of me. They'll say, 'Oh, there goes old man Coyote, a ball of snot.'" Again, Coyote slipped and broke his knife. So he picked up another knife and he kept cutting away. And the monster kept begging Coyote to come out. He'd say, "Coyote, Coyote, come out! Come out my ear!" Coyote said, "No, I'm not going to come out your ear, because then all the animal people will say, 'Oh, there goes old man Coyote, a ball of earwax.'" Again, Coyote slipped and broke his knife. So he picked up another knife and he kept cutting away. And this monster, he was getting desperate. He said, "Coyote, Coyote, come out! Come out the back!" Coyote said, "No, I'm staying right here." Finally, Coyote was down to his last knife, and there was only one piece of flesh holding the heart in place. Coyote turned to the animals and said, "Get ready, this monster's going to die. When he takes his last breath and opens up, you kick those bones out and follow right behind. Go quickly, because there won't be much time." Coyote reached up and he started to cut, and he slipped and broke his knife. So he grabbed the heart and he pulled as hard as he could. Finally, the heart broke free, and the monster took one last huge breath and opened up. The animals kicked the bones out and followed right behind. Now, Raccoon, he wasn't sure which way to go. Finally, he decided to run out towards the back. Raccoon ran as fast as he could, but just as his body cleared, the monster began to close up, and his tail got stuck. He had to pull a few times to get his tail free. Raccoon, he was so relieved to be free of the monster. He breathed a huge sigh of relief and he wiped the sweat from his brow. That's why to this day Raccoon has those rings around his tail and that mask. And you always see him down by the river washing his hands. Muskrat, he wasn't sure which way to go. He decided he was going to follow Raccoon. After all, he was much smaller and he thought he was a lot quicker. Muskrat ran as fast as he could, but just as his body cleared, the monster closed up tight. And Muskrat pulled and pulled and pulled, but he couldn't get his tail free. So he called for Coyote. "Iceye'ye! Iceye'ye! Help! I'm stuck!" Coyote looked around the body of this huge monster, but he didn't see anyone. "Nimíipuu, where are you?" "I'm underneath the monster's tail." Coyote walked around to the back of the monster, and sure enough, there was Muskrat. Coyote grabbed Muskrat's paws, and he started to count. Nox, Lepit, Mita, and he pulled as hard as he could. When he did this, it pulled all the fur off Muskrat's tail. And Coyote scolded Muskrat. He said, "I told you to hurry up. I told you you didn't have much time, but you just dawdled along. From now on, all of your descendants will be reminded of your pokiness." That's why to this day, Muskrat has no fur on his tail. Many of the animals, they said, "Oh, let that monster's body lie there and rot. Serves him right for coming up onto the land and causing all this trouble." But Coyote had a use for this monster. Coyote cut off the monster's legs, and he threw him way up north into a place we call Canada today. From that place, the long-legged people will be from. That's where the tall Blackfeet are from. Coyote cut off the monster's head, and he threw it way over to the east into a place we call Montana today. From that place, the Flathead people are from. And Coyote did this, cutting off parts of this monster, and he threw them in all different directions, and people sprang up from those parts. Finally, there was nothing left but the heart and a few ribs. And the animals came to Coyote and said, "What about this place here? It's very beautiful, and you didn't put anyone here." So Coyote told the crane, "Go down to the river and get some water." Coyote picked up the heart of the monster, and he squeezed the blood from the heart. He took the water and he washed the blood from his hands. As the blood hit the ground, people sprang up. And Coyote said, "These people, they'll live here in this beautiful place. They won't be a very big people because I've deprived them, but they'll have big hearts, and they'll be the fiercest on the battlefield." And that's how the Nez Perce come to live in this area here. And that's how Coyote created people.